The apartment it is quiet and empty. Brothers Do-hyun and Min-chul are sitting at the kitchen table. In front of them are plates of stewed potatoes. The potatoes were cooked 3 days ago. Mom simply heated them up in a frying pan and went into the room to paint her nails. Then she emerged, scented, wearing a new sweater. "Sit quietly. Go to bed yourself," she said, and left. The door closed. The potatoes are dry. Do-hyun picks at them with his fork. "I don't want this," he says. "Then don't eat it," says Min-chul. He eats it himself. He eats quickly, without looking. He needs to eat, because there won't be anything else until tomorrow. Do-hyun climbs down from his chair and goes into their room. He lies down on the bed, face down in the pillow. It's getting dark outside. Mom's on the bus now. She's going somewhere bright and cheerful. And here, it's just them. Min-chul finishes eating. He washes both plates. He washes his fork and his brother's. He wipes the table. He does it silently. He's 7 years old, but it feels like 100. He goes into the room, too. Do-hyun lies motionless. "Shall we play?" asks Min-chul. "I don't want to." "Watch cartoons?" "Not interested." Min-chul sits down on her bed. They just sit and look out the window. Lights are on in the windows of the neighboring house. People are eating dinner there, talking, laughing, and there's silence. The silence is so thick, it's ringing in your ears. They're already in their pajamas. They've already brushed their teeth. They've already gone to bed. The apartment is dark. Mom's still not here. Do-hyun stirs in his bed. "Min-cheol? Huh? You're not sleeping?" "No, I think we're disturbing her." Min-chul doesn't answer. He just lies there and stares at the ceiling. He thinks so too. Mom always sighs when she sees them. She says, "Oh, I have no more strength." She doesn't have the strength for them. She has the strength for work, for her friends, for new dresses, but not for them. "Probably," he says quietly. Do-hyun turns to him. Only a silhouette is visible in the darkness. "What if we leave?" Do-hyun says. "Just up and leave, and she'll feel better." "Where would we go? We're 7 years old." "I don't know, but maybe it will get better. Maybe someone will find us and love us." Min-chul thinks. The street is scary. It's dark and cold. But here, in this silence, it's even scarier. It smells of loneliness. "What if she comes looking for us?" Min-chul asks. "Will she call the police? Will she cry?" Do-hyun is silent for a long time. Then he whispers, "What if she doesn't?" The words hang in the air. They both know it's true. Mom might not look. She might think they went to Grandma's. Or she might just sigh with relief. "Okay," Min-chul says. His voice is firm. "Let's leave. But not just like that. We need a plan." "I have a plan," Do-hyun says quickly. "We'll find a rich dad. One with no kids. He'll be alone, and he'll take us in." "Okay," Min-chul agrees. "We'll find a rich dad." Mom came home late. They heard her staggering down the hallway, dropping her bag, closing the door to her room. Then there was silence. Then, snoring. Min-chul looks at his alarm clock. The glowing numbers read 4 in the morning. "It's time," he whispers. They get up. They act quietly, like mice. They talked about this all night in whispers. Now we have to do it. Do-hyun takes his school backpack out from under his bed. He places his stuffed bunny at the very bottom. Then he carefully folds his clothes. 2 warm sweaters, pants, socks. He picks up his toothbrush and a small towel. His hands are shaking. Min-chul does everything quickly. He folds his clothes too. His favorite typewriter, his notebook and pencils. Then he sneaks into the kitchen, opens the cupboard. He takes what he can grab without making a noise. A pack of cookies, 2 candy bars, 2 apples. He pours water into the plastic bottle. He stuffs it all into his backpack. He comes back. Do-hyun is standing by the shelf. "Are you taking it?" Min-chul asks quietly. Do-hyun nods. He takes a photo frame off the wall. It's a photo of him and his mother in the park. He looks at the picture for a second, then puts it in his backpack. They start getting dressed. They put on 2 pairs of socks, warm pants, sweaters, jackets on top. They look fat and clumsy. The backpacks seem enormous on their small backs. Min-chul approaches the room's door. He listens. The apartment is quiet. Only the snoring comes from behind his mother's door. He turns around. He looks at their room for the last time. At the 2 beds, at the toy box. His entire childhood was here, somehow very quiet and sad. He takes Do-hyun's hand. They walk out into the hallway. They pass Mom's room. Do-hyun slows his pace. He looks at the crack under the door. A steady snore comes from there. Mom is asleep. She doesn't know that her sons are leaving forever. Min-chul pulls him by the hand. They approach the front door. Minchul carefully turns the latch. There's a click. The sound seems very loud. They freeze. The snoring continues. Minchul presses the handle. The door opens. Cold, stale air blows in from the stairwell. He steps forward. Do-hyun follows. Minchul pulls the door towards him so that it closes silently. There's a soft but final click. Now they stand on a dark landing. The door to their past lives is closed. Before them are the cold steps leading down. Behind them are backpacks with everything they own. Ahead lies the unknown. They hold hands and walk down. They walk out of the building. It's cold and dark outside. Every other streetlight flickers. Do-hyun hunches his shoulders. "Where to now?" he asks. His voice trembles with cold and fear. Minchul looks around. Their neighborhood is asleep. He knows they can't stay here. One of the neighbors will see and call their mother. He squeezes his brother's hand tighter, back to the warm, albeit empty apartment. "Minchul, let's go to Grandma's instead," he suggests. "She's on the other side of town. Mom won't find us right away." Minchul shakes his head. He's thinking, "Grandma will call Mom right away. She'll be scared. She's old. She won't understand. And then," he pauses, "what will we tell her? That Mom doesn't love us? Grandma won't believe us. She'll say we're making it up." Do-hyun is silent. He understands that his brother is right. Grandma always says, "Your mother is very tired. You have to understand her. She is on her mother's side." "Then what?" Do-hyun almost cries. "He'll want to believe us. He'll let us into his house, feed us. And then, when everything is settled, well, we'll explain everything to him, or we'll stay with him forever." Do-hyun listens. The idea seems scary and strange to him, but it also seems like a way out. "Where are we going to find a dad like that?" "In a rich neighborhood, where there are big houses," Minchul says. He stands up. "Let's take the bus. The first one leaves just about this morning." They walk to the bus stop. There's almost no one on the streets. Only a street sweeper is sweeping the sidewalk. He looks at them in surprise. Two little boys with huge backpacks at such an early hour. Minchul looks away and walks faster. 20 minutes later, the bus arrives. They climb on. The conductor, sleepy, reaches out for money. To the last stop," says Minchul in his most adult voice. He counts out the money from the small piggy bank he brought with him. She hands them the tickets without even looking. They climb into the back seat. The bus starts moving. Do-hyun presses his forehead against the cold glass. He watches the familiar shops, the school, the park float by. Everything he knew. Everything is left behind. He wants to cry, but he clenches his teeth. Minchul is sitting next to him. Minchul isn't crying, so he won't either. The bus ride takes a long time. The neighborhoods outside the window change. Here's their old, run-down neighborhood. Here's a nicer neighborhood, with clean houses. And then completely different streets begin. Wide, with trees. Beyond the fences, you can see not just houses, but real mansions, with large windows and pointed roofs. "Here," whispers Minchul. He pulls the bus stop cord. They go out. The air here is different. Clean, smells of pine. It's very quiet. No cars, no people. Only the birds are chirping. They stand on the deserted street and look around. "Which house should I choose?" Do-hyun asks. "The biggest one," Minchul says without hesitation. "The richest dad should have the biggest house." They walk along high stone fences. Some have wrought iron gates, revealing gardens and fountains. Do-hyun feels as if they've entered another world, a world straight out of a movie. The largest fence appears ahead. It's made of dark stone, taller than Dad, and behind it is not just a house. It's a real palace, with columns on either side of the door, with perfectly trimmed bushes. Everything looks austere, cold, and very rich. They stop in front of black wrought iron gates. The gates are closed. Do-hyun looks at the house. His heart is pounding somewhere in his throat. "Minchul, let's not," he whispers pleadingly. "This isn't just a rich guy. This is some kind of king. He won't let us in. He'll call the police." "If we turn around now, where will we go?" Minchul asks. His face is pale, but his lips are pressed into a thin line. "Back? To the cold potatoes? To the silence? We're already here. We have to try." He presses a small button on the gatepost. A soft ringing sounds somewhere inside. No one answers. Minchul looks at the camera above the gate. The red light on it is out. Perhaps it's been turned off. Then he starts shaking the gate. It's heavy and doesn't budge. But there's a small wicket gate nearby. It's small, almost invisible in the stone. Minchul pushes it. The gate gives way with a soft creak. It wasn't locked, Minchul says and steps inside. Do-hyun, closing his eyes, follows him. They walk along the clean path to the huge door. Up close, the house seems even bigger, even sterner. Do-hyun feels like a bug. He grabs his brother by the jacket. I'm scared. Me too, Minchul admits honestly. But we're already inside. We have to knock. They stand before a massive dark wooden door. There's no bell nearby, just a heavy copper knocker in the shape of a lion's head. Minchul raises his hand. His fingers are freezing. He slams the hammer on the door once. The sound is dull, heavy. It echoes through the quiet morning like a gunshot. Nothing happens. He knocks harder, once, twice. There is silence inside. Despair rises in their throats. All their courage, their entire plan, it all falls apart. They stand at a stranger's door, and no one opens. Then Minchul clenches his fists and starts pounding on the door. He pounds with all his might. Hey! He shouts. His childish voice breaks. Hey! Open up! Do-hyun, seeing this, also loses the last of his fear. Only fatigue, cold, and a burning desire for someone to let them in remain. He joins his brother. He slams his palms against the hardwood and screams. He screams what they had imagined. But now there is real pain and hope in this scream. Daddy! Do-hyun screams, tears finally streaming down his cheeks. Daddy, open the door! It's us! Your sons! Minchul shouts, continuing to knock. Let us in, Daddy! Please! We can't take it anymore! They shout and knock until their hands ache and their voices become hoarse. They almost don't believe the door will open. And then a miracle happens. Somewhere inside, a lock clicks. Slowly, with a heavy grinding sound, the door begins to slide aside. Kim Chang-min sits in his office. The morning has just begun. The vast house is quiet. He's wrapped in a soft, dark robe, holding a large cup of cocoa. He sips slowly, looking out the window at his garden. He has no important meetings today, just peace and quiet, a rare luxury. He hears a distant knock, dull, insistent. He winces. Who could it be at such an early hour? No one had warned him of a visit. His men at the gate hadn't reported him either. The knocking repeats, and suddenly voices mingle with it. Children's voices, shouting something unintelligible. Chang-min puts his cup down. He goes to the house control panel. He presses the button for the external cameras. The screen shows an empty path to the gate. The camera at the front door only shows part of the steps. Someone is too close, right under the lens. Children? At that moment, Mrs. Kim, his housekeeper, comes running into the office. Her usually impassive face is filled with extreme concern. Chang-min sassy, she says, slightly out of breath. There are children at the door, 2 boys, little ones, with backpacks. Children? He asks, not understanding. Yes, they're knocking and shouting. They're shouting, Daddy! They're asking you to open the door. Chang-min looks at her, trying to process this information. Children, at his door, calling for their dad. This is some kind of stupid mistake, or a provocation. The thought of a trap flashes through his head like lightning. Are they alone? No one else? I watched from the second floor. There's no one on the property, just the 2 of them at the front door. You can hear despair and fatigue in it. And these screams, they creep into your head, preventing you from thinking. Changmin throws his robe over the back of a chair. He's wearing dark sweatpants and a simple t-shirt. He wouldn't want to be seen like this, but now is not the time. He walks down the long marble hallway to the front door. Ms. Kim follows him, muttering something under her breath about safety. He stops at the door. The knock reverberates right into his chest. He hears a voice, thin and broken. Daddy, let me go, please. Something inside him clenches. This doesn't sound like a game. There's real pain in that voice. He takes a deep breath, grabs the heavy latch, and turns it. Then he pulls the massive door toward him. The cold morning air hits his face, and he sees them. 2 boys stand on the steps, directly in front of him. They seem tiny against the backdrop of the enormous portal. Both wear hats pulled down to their ears and thick, baggy jackets. Over their backs are enormous backpacks, almost as large. Their faces are pale, their cheeks flushed from the cold and, presumably, from screaming. Their eyes are wide open, full of fear, hope, and a complete readiness to defend themselves. And at that moment, Changmin stops breathing. He looks at these faces, at the shape of their eyes, at the shape of their eyebrows, at the stubborn, slightly jutting chin. He sees in them not just other people's children. He sees himself in them, himself in that distant childhood, in the old, tattered photographs his mother kept. The resemblance is not just distant, it is deafening. Like a punch to the gut. One of the boys, the one slightly ahead, clenches his fists. The other hides his face behind his brother's back, but also glances at him furtively. They are silent, as if they themselves were frightened by the door finally opening. The thought comes suddenly, sharply, and clearly, like a flash. Myeon, Lee Myeon. It was more than 7 years ago. A short whirlwind romance. She was beautiful, cheerful, independent, and very proud. They dated for a few months. Then she suddenly started talking about family, about children. He was young then, absorbed in building his business. The thought of children terrified him. He laughed it off. They had a fight. Then she disappeared, for several weeks. She called only once. Her voice was strange, distant. I'm leaving, Changmin. Don't look for me. I don't need your money. I don't need anything from you. He tried to object, offered to help, but she cut him off. He never saw her again. He heard, out of the corner of his ear, that she had left town. Over time, he almost stopped thinking about her. But now, looking at these two, all the pieces fit together to form a terrifying, unbelievable picture. She could have been pregnant. She could have said nothing, out of pride, or out of resentment. She could have given birth, twins, and raised them alone, without telling him a word. The thought that he could have had children all these years and never known it hits him with such force that he is momentarily speechless. You, he begins, then falters. His voice sounds hoarse. Are you looking for someone? The boy in front takes a step. His name is Min Chul, though Changmin doesn't know that yet. We're looking for our dad, the boy says clearly, but his voice trembles. Our mom, she said our dad lives here, that he'd be happy to see us. Changmin looks at them, at their frightened but determined faces, at their backpacks, a sign that they're not just here for a quick visit. Aren't you cold? He asks suddenly, and this mundane question seems the most important thing to him right now. Come inside. He steps back, letting them pass. The boys exchange glances. Then, cautiously, as if afraid the trap will snap shut, they step over the threshold. Mrs. Kim stands still, her eyes wide with amazement. Changmin leads them not into the formal living room, but into a small, cozy room next to the kitchen, where a fireplace is burning. It smells of wood and warmth. Sit down. Take off your jackets, he says. The boys obey silently. They struggle to pull off their backpacks and lower them to the floor. Without these enormous burdens, they seem even smaller and more fragile. Changmin looks at Ms. Kim. Please bring them some warm milk and maybe some cookies. She nods and quickly leaves. He sits down in the chair opposite them. They are sitting on the couch, huddled close to each other. Having drunk milk, they seem a little calmer. What is your name? Asks Changmin. I'm Min Cheol, says the bold one. And this is my brother Do-hyun. Do-hyun only nods, clutching the cup of milk to his chest. And your mother? Lee Myeon? The boys flinch at the name. They exchange glances. Yes, says Min Cheol. She told us everything, recently. She told us who our dad is. And where he lives. Changmin felt his head spin. He knew Myeon's pride. It was hard to believe she'd just sent the children to him. Why didn't she come herself? Why did she send you alone? Min Cheol lowered his eyes. He was telling a memorized story, but his voice tinged with genuine, unchildish bitterness. She didn't want us anymore. She yelled all the time, said we were a burden, that we were ruining her life. Yesterday she said, Enough! Go to your father. I'm fed up. We packed our things and left. Do-hyun begins to sob quietly. He's not acting. The memories of his mother's indifference, the cold in their old apartment, all of it is real. His tears are real. Changmin watches these tears. He sees Do-hyun clinging to his brother, seeking protection. He sees Min Cheol, barely able to contain his own trembling, hugging his brother's shoulders. This image burns into his mind like a hot nail. Logic screams at him to check. He needs to call Myeon. He needs to take a test. He needs to find out if this situation is a setup by his enemies. Thoughts of possible danger flicker, but they are dim and distant. He understands her gaze. She's thinking about common sense, about caution. Changmin rises from his chair. He approaches the sofa and, slowly, so as not to startle them, squats down in front of the boys. He looks into their faces, into their eyes, wet with tears and wide with fear. That's it, he says quietly. His voice is unexpectedly soft. That's enough. You don't need to be afraid anymore. You've come home. He sees a silent surprise, mixed with disbelief, flash in Min Chul's eyes. Do-hyun stops crying and looks at him, holding his breath. Changmin continues. He's not asking. He's announcing. This is your home now. No one will yell at you. No one will say you're a burden. Understood? He reaches out and very carefully, as if afraid to scare the bird, places it on Do-hyun's head. The boy freezes, then his shoulders finally relax. Changmin looks at Min Cheol. Are you the eldest? The door he's kept closed for years, the door to that part of his life called family, is now wide open, and he doesn't want to close it anymore. Do-hyun wakes up first. He lies motionless for a few seconds, unsure where he is. Above him isn't the familiar cracked ceiling, but a high white ceiling with carved moldings. He's not lying on his hard mattress, but in a huge soft bed that sinks under his weight. The blanket is unusually light and warm. He carefully turns his head. Next to him, in an equally large bed, sleeps Min Chul. The room is huge and bright. Sunlight streams through the tall window. 2 new tables and 2 chairs stand against the wall. A soft carpet lies on the floor. Everything smells clean and new. Do-hyun sits up. He sees their backpacks neatly stacked against the wall. His bunny is sitting on the pillow next to him. So this isn't a dream. There's a soft knock on the door. Your bathroom is over there. She points to the other door in the room and walks out. Do-hyun looks at Min Chul. He opens his eyes too. They look at each other silently. In their old house, no one woke them up so quietly, and no one said, "Good morning." They tiptoe to explore the bathroom. It's shiny. Everything is new. The towels are fluffy and smell fresh. They wash their faces with cold water. Everything seems unreal. Then they go out into the hallway. They don't know where to go, but a faint smell of food wafts through. They follow the scent. In the kitchen, Ms. They eat slowly, almost reverently. The food is delicious and hot, the kind they cook in the movies. They don't talk. They just eat and stealthily glance around the huge, bright kitchen with its gleaming appliances. Changmin arrives just as they're finishing breakfast. He's dressed in simple dark pants and a sweater. He looks less formal than yesterday. So, did you sleep well? He asks. His voice still sounds a little unfamiliar. Deep, the boys nod. Want to see the house? Changmin suggests. He seems a little unsure himself, as if he doesn't know how to give a tour. They nod again, and the journey begins. Changmin shows them the living room with its high ceilings and enormous sofa. He points out the fireplace, where the wood is already burning. Then he leads them into the library, a room completely filled with bookshelves from floor to ceiling. Do-hyun and Min Cheol look up. They've never seen so many books. Then there's a home theater with rows of plush armchairs, a game room with a pool table, the existence of which Changmin seems to have forgotten. They walk along long hallways, peering into empty bedrooms. Everything is huge, clean, and a little deserted. Does anyone live here? Do-hyun finally dares to ask, looking around one of the living rooms the size of their old apartment. No, Changmin says honestly. Just me, and Mrs. Kim. But she has her own house at the far end of the garden. And now you too. Min Chul gazes silently at this space. His 7-year-old brain can't fully comprehend such richness. He only feels as if he's entered another world. A world without old furniture, threadbare carpet, or musty smell. Even the air here is different. After the tour, Changmin looks at their clothes, the worn-out sweaters and pants they wore yesterday. You need new clothes, he says. Let's go shopping. They're driving his car. It's a big black car with a very quiet engine. The driver drives silently. Changmin sits next to him in the front, the boys in the back. They look out the window, pressing their foreheads against the glass. The store they arrive at is almost deserted. It's not the noisy mall their mother used to take them to. It's quiet, the carpets are thick, and the items are displayed in separate areas rather than on racks. A smiling woman immediately approaches them. Changmin looks a little lost. He points at the boys. They have everything they need. Clothes, shoes, everything. What size? The woman asks. Changmin freezes. He doesn't know. He looks at the boys with a slight panic. Min Chul, seeing this, says, We'll have a size 7 or 8, please. The woman smiles and starts bringing things. Pants, shirts, sweaters, pajamas, jackets. She offers them to choose what they like. Do-hyun and Min Cheol point timidly at first. Then, seeing that Changmin only nods and says, Take it, they become bolder. They choose warm sweaters, comfortable pants, pajamas with cars and dinosaurs. Changmin watches this process. He doesn't say, That's expensive, or That's impractical. He simply stands and watches as they fill the baskets. Then there's the fitting. The boys emerge from the changing rooms in new clothes. They look different, clean, neat, like children from a good family. Changmin looks at them, and something in his chest tightens strangely. This isn't just buying things, it's an act of caring. For the first time in his life, he's buying clothes for children. For his children. The thought still stuns him. Does everything fit? He asks, his voice softer. Yes, says Minchul, smoothing the fabric of the new jacket with his palm. It's warm and very beautiful. Then we'll take everything, Changmin says to the saleswoman. He pays with his card, not even looking at the total. The bags containing their new life are carried to the car. On the way back, Changmin is silent. He looks out the window, but sees not the street, but their faces in new clothes. For the first time in many years, he feels not the weight of responsibility, but its strange, warm value. He feels like a father, and this feeling doesn't frighten him. It fills the silence inside him. When they return, a man is already waiting for them at the gate. He is slim, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit. His face is expressionless, but his eyes scan the boys as they emerge from the car with new bags. It is Park Ki-jung, Changmin's right-hand man. Changmin, seeing him, quietly says something to Mrs. Kim, and she takes the boys into the house to unpack the groceries. He remains with Ki-jung in the study. The door closes. Ki-jung asks immediately, without preamble. His voice is even, but there is steel in it. My sons! Changmin answers just as bluntly, sitting down at the table. Silence falls in the office. Ki-jung doesn't move. You're... what? Changmin, you don't have sons. It turns out you do. Their names are Do-hyun and Min-cheol. They are 7 years old. Where did they come from last night? Ki-jung takes a step forward. I checked the security footage. They came on their own, from the street. Are you saying that you had sons for 7 years and didn't know? Their mother, Elle and Mion. She didn't tell me anything. And yesterday, she apparently decided to get rid of them. She sent them to me. Ki-jung closes his eyes for a second, as if in pain. And you believed that story? You didn't even check? Changmin, this is insane. It could be anything. A trap, blackmail, a setup by competitors. They could have picked up kids who look like you. You let 2 strangers into the house. Changmin looks at him calmly, too calmly. They look like me, Ki-jung. Very similar. Similarity doesn't prove anything. The assistant's voice rises half a tone for the first time. We need tests. We need to find this woman, Mi-yeon. We need to check everything. In the meantime, we can't leave them here. It's a huge risk for you, for the case. It can wait, Changmin snaps. And their children. They're not guilty of anything. They're scared. They'll stay here. Safe. Ki-jung looks at him as if he were a man who had suddenly fallen gravely ill. You're not thinking with your head. You're acting on your emotions. That's not right. That's the difference between us, Changmin says, and there's that same steel in his voice that makes Ki-jung wary. I've made my decision. They are my sons. I will protect them. From everyone, including from your suspicions. Understood? This isn't a request. It's an order. Ki-jung freezes. He knows that tone. There's no point arguing. Understood, he finally says. What should I do? Find Elle and Mion, quietly, without attracting attention. Find out everything about her for the last 7 years. About the children. But she shouldn't know about it. And no one else should know. Especially anyone who might be interested. In the meantime, the children live here. Yes. And no outsiders should know of their existence. Increase security around the perimeter. Discreetly. Ki-jung nods. The business part of his mind is already kicking in, making plans. Okay, I'll arrange everything. But, Changmin, he pauses. Be careful. The heart is a poor guide in our affairs. Changmin doesn't answer. He's already looking out the window, toward the house, where the 2 boys are unpacking their new things. His decision is made, and no amount of rational argument will change it. Changmin stands in the middle of the playroom, feeling awkward. He's holding 2 game consoles. He looks at the boys sitting on the soft carpet, watching him with interest. Do you play video games? He asks hesitantly. Min-cheol nods. Do-hyun adds, Tolik had a console in his yard. We played sometimes. Changmin plugs the game consoles into the large TV. He himself hasn't played since he was a child. They choose a flashy racing game. Changmin sits cross-legged on the carpet next to them. His large frame seems out of place next to 2 small children. The first few minutes are a complete mess. Changmin keeps crashing into the virtual barriers. Do-hyun giggles quietly. Min-cheol tries to remain serious, but the corners of his lips twitch too. Min-cheol finally can't take it anymore. The word date slips out of him without meaning to. Everyone freezes for a second. Changmin looks at him, then nods slowly. Got it, I'll try. He tries. It goes a little better. Then Do-hyun loses and happily gives up his place to Changmin. Now it's Changmin and Min-cheol. They compete. Changmin suddenly gets excited. He frowns in concentration, leaning his body into turns, as if it helps the car. Min-cheol ultimately wins. He lets out a quiet cry of victory and then falls silent, embarrassed. But Changmin isn't angry. He chuckles and says, "Good job. I'll catch you next time." Then they build a fort out of giant soft blocks. Changmin helps lift the heavy block up. The structure is lopsided and comical. The three of them sit inside this rickety fort, and Changmin tells them some ridiculous story about a dragon who was afraid of the dark. He tells it awkwardly, stumbling over it. But the boys listen, gaping. No one had ever built a fort with them or told them stories like this. It all seems awkward and childish. But the room is warm, and all three are genuinely happy at this moment. A couple of days later, they're having breakfast in the kitchen. Changmin is joking, his expression relaxed. Suddenly, his special phone vibrates quietly but insistently in his pants pocket, the one he uses only for work. Changmin's face changes instantly. All the softness falls away like a mask. His gaze becomes sharp, focused, cold. The corners of his lips turn down. He nods apologetically, stands, and walks out of the kitchen, holding the phone to his ear. His voice from behind the door comes through, muffled and abrupt. Just a few phrases. When? Where? Figure it out. I'm waiting for a report. Do-hyun and Min-cheol stop chewing. They exchange glances. They know that tone. It's what their mother sometimes said when she was really angry. But there was something more to Changmin's voice. Not anger, but something dangerous and icy. As if a completely different person had entered the room. When Changmin returns, he tries to smile again, but it's forced. The shadow hasn't completely left his face. The boys are silent. They finish their breakfast to the soft tap of his fingers on the table. He's thinking hard about something. This call is the first crack in the perfect picture of their new life. The first hint that their new dad has another life. A very grown-up one, and, it seems, a very dark one. That night, Do-hyun woke up to a scream. His own scream. He dreamed of his mother. She didn't just leave. She turned to him, her face twisted with anger. She said, "I always knew I didn't need you. And your new dad will kick you out too. No one needs you." He sits up in bed, shaking. Tears stream down his cheeks. He tries to hold back his sobs, but he can't. The silence of the enormous house weighs on him. The door to their bedroom quietly opens. Changmin's silhouette appears in the threshold. He's wearing dark pajamas, his hair disheveled. "Do-hyun?" he calls softly. "Are you crying?" Do-hyun can't answer. He only nods in the darkness, shivering. Changmin comes over and sits on the edge of his bed. "A nightmare?" Do-hyun nods again. "About Mom?" "Yes," Do-hyun breathes out. Changmin doesn't ask for details. He doesn't say, "It's just a dream." He just sits next to him. Then he gently places his large hand on his back. "It's okay. I'm here. No one will kick you out. Ever." His voice is low, calm, like a warm blanket. He begins to slowly, rhythmically pat Do-hyun's back. A minute passes, then another. Do-hyun's trembling gradually subsides. His breathing evens out. But he's afraid that if Changmin leaves, the nightmare will return. "Can you sit for a bit?" he whispers. "Of course," Changmin says. He leans against the headboard, keeping his hand on his arm. Only then does he very carefully rise, adjust the blanket, and tiptoe away. For the first time in years, he feels like his presence can be a protection, not a threat. A week passes. Life settles into a new routine. The boys get used to the big house, to Mrs. Kim, to the delicious food. And they get used to Changmin. At first, they called him Mr. Kim, or simply didn't call him anything. Then, after the games, the occasional dad slipped out. Now it's heard more and more often. "Dad, can I have some juice?" "Dad, look what I drew." "Dad, are we going to the park today?" At first, Changmin winced every time he heard the word addressed to himself. Then he simply nodded. Now he responds to it naturally. His stern face softens when Do-hyun runs toward him with a new drawing, or when Min-cheol, with the seriousness of an adult, tells him about something he read in a book. He is their daddy, for the world, for them, and most surprisingly, for himself. One evening, Changmin reads them a book before bed. He sits on the rug between their beds, his voice leisurely reciting stories about pirates. Do-hyun watches his profile, illuminated by the soft lamplight. He watches him painstakingly create the different voices for the characters. It's funny, but he's really diligent. Minchul lies with the blanket pulled up to his chin, staring at the ceiling. He's not listening to a story. He's listening to that voice. Warm, patient. The voice of the man who could kick them out, but instead buys them clothes, plays games, and sits next to them when they have bad dreams. In Minchul's chest, this feeling is shame. Real burning shame. He's a good man. He trusts us. They whisper for a long time in the darkness. Fear wars with conscience. But the images of the last few days, breakfast, games, a hand on the back when it's scary, outweigh. They decide. Tomorrow, they confess everything. The whole next day, they feel downcast. Kim has already gone to her room. They stand in the doorway of Changmin's office. He's writing something at his desk. "Dad," Minchul says quietly. Changmin looks up. He sees their serious, frightened faces. "Did something happen?" "Come in." They come in and stand in front of his desk, shifting from foot to foot. "We have a confession," Minchul begins. His voice trembles. "We lied to you." Changmin puts his pen down. He doesn't say anything, just looks at them. His gaze is heavy. Do-hyun can't take it anymore and starts talking, the words escaping in a jumbled stream. "Mom didn't send us to you. She didn't tell us where you lived. We left on our own. We were lonely. She ignored us. We ate old food. We decided to run away and find a rich dad. We saw your big house and made up a story." Minchul, seeing his brother overcome with emotion, picks up the conversation more clearly. "We didn't know who you were. We were just looking for a big house. We thought a rich, lonely man who needed a family would trust us and let us in. We lied about Mom. She's not that angry. She just doesn't care. She probably wouldn't have even noticed we were gone right away. We deceived you. We're very much to blame." They fall silent, heads bowed, prepared for anger, for shouting, for being kicked back out into the cold. The silence in the office becomes deafening. Changmin sits completely still. He's not looking at them, but somewhere in front of him. His face is a stone mask. Everything inside him is turning over. The first feeling is a sharp, burning sting of deception. He's been tricked. 2 7-year-olds, Kim Changmin. They've played on his emotions, on his hope, on his desire to believe in this miracle. The logical part of his brain, so diligently silenced by his heart, now screams, "I told you so!" But almost immediately, a wave of something else rises above this feeling. He listens to their confession again in his head. Not that made-up story about an evil mother, but the real thing. "We were lonely. We ate old food. She wouldn't have noticed." There's no lie in those words. There's despair there. Such deep despair that 2 little boys would choose to go into the unknown, to a stranger, rather than stay in their home. He looks at their lowered heads, at their trembling, clasped fingers. They don't look like triumphant heroes or clever con artists. They look like 2 cornered animals waiting to strike. His anger melts, dissolving into something infinitely more powerful, pity. Yes, they deceived him, but they did it not out of malice, but because they were in unbearable pain. They sought salvation, and they found it here, with him. Changmin slowly gets up from the table. He walks around it and stops in front of them. The boys shudder, expecting the worst. He doesn't shout. He drops to one knee to be level with them. First, he places his hand on Minchul's shoulder, then on Do-hyun's. "Raise your heads," he says quietly. They struggle to look up at him, their eyes full of tears and fear. Changmin says, and they freeze, not realizing that they told the truth. That was very brave. "You're not kicking us out?" Do-hyun asks in a whisper. "No, but we lied," Minchul blurts out, as if he himself can't believe it. "I know, you lied, but the pain that made you run away, it wasn't a lie, right?" The boys nod silently. "You wanted someone to love and care for you, right?" Changmin continues. They nod again. Changmin takes a deep breath. He looks at those 2 familiar, frightened, guilty faces. "Then listen to me carefully. This is the most important thing. Your deception, it's unimportant. Understood? It's unimportant. You came to me, and I'm glad you came. You're here now. This is your home, and I will take care of you, no matter what happens. This is no longer up for discussion." He opens his arms, and after a moment of hesitation, they rush into his arms. Do-hyun sobs into his shoulder. Minchul, gritting his teeth, simply clutches his sweater convulsively. Changmin holds them. He looks somewhere above their heads. He thinks of Lee and Myeon, of the one whose indifference drove the children to such despair. He thinks that she probably won't look, and if she does, he'll have to deal with it. But those are details. The main thing is, here it is, in his arms. 2 small, trembling lives who have now truly trusted him, and he will never let go. Changmin is sitting in his office. A thin folder lies on the desk in front of him. Kijung is standing next to him. His face is unreadable. Everything's been checked, says Kijung. Lee Myun, 33 years old, works as an administrator at a beauty salon, lives in the same apartment. For the past month, she's led a normal life, went to work. In the evenings, she'd go to bars and clubs. She's been seen in the company of various men. Changmin leafs through the report silently. There are photographs, extracts, brief notes. The children? He asks without looking. There were no missing persons reports filed with the police, no calls to social services. She didn't even report them missing to the school. The school called her 3 days later. According to a neighbor, Mielon replied that the children had gone to stay with relatives in the countryside. That was the end of it. Changmin closes the folder. There's no surprise in his eyes, only a cold, heavy understanding. The boys' assumption had been true. Their mother really hadn't been looking for them. They were so unimportant to her that their disappearance hadn't even raised a formal alarm. She didn't tell anyone about the children's possible father, he clarifies. No, those close to her believe the father is some foreign student who left long ago. Your name has never been mentioned. Okay, thank you. Changmin pushes the folder aside. The case is closed. He has all the answers. Now his sons are his alone. 2 days pass. It's late evening. The boys are already asleep. The house is silent. Suddenly, a sharp, continuous ringing sounds from the security console at the gate. Someone is furiously pressing the button. A woman is visible on the monitor. She's shouting something into the camera, her face contorted with anger. It's Elle and Mian. The guards report to Changmin. He orders them not to let her in, but a minute later, there's a wild crash from the front door. She slams something heavy on it, probably a heel. Kim Changmin! I know you're in there. Open up. You stole my children. Her voice pierces the night silence. Changmin, his face stony, steps out into the hallway. He nods to the guards. They pull back the heavy bolts. Myeon stands there. She's wearing a short, bright dress, her makeup smudged. She smells of alcohol and cheap perfume. She bursts in, surveying the luxurious hallway with a greedy, angry gaze. Where are they? She hisses. My sons. I was told they were seen with you. Are you completely crazy? Kidnapping children? They're sleeping, Changmin says coldly, blocking the way into the house. And they're safe now, which is something you never managed to provide for them. They're my children, Myeon screams. You have no right. I'll call the police. Changmin doesn't move. He looks at her with such disdain that she falls silent for a second. Call me, he says quietly. Explain why you didn't report them missing 2 weeks ago. Explain why 7-year-old children decided to run away from their own mother. Myeon freezes. Her anger gives way to calculation. She realizes she doesn't hold the trump card. She glances around the house again, and her eyes light up not with maternal concern, but with a simple, greedy sparkle. Okay, she says, and her tone changes. It becomes businesslike, brazen. Let's talk like adults. I don't mind, really. They're a burden, of course. They make noise, beg for food, tear clothes. I see you're a man with money. You probably even enjoy it, playing benefactor. Changmin remains silent, letting her speak. I'm willing to give in, she continues, pausing for effect, for good compensation. Just once. And you forget about me, and I forget about them, as if they never existed. They're yours. Formalize the adoption. Do whatever you want. This isn't even a request anymore. It's open, cynical blackmail. She's selling her children, here and now. At that moment, 2 frightened faces appear from around the corner of the hallway. Dohyun and Minchul. They were awakened by the noise. They stand in their pajamas and look at their mother. They see her familiar pose, hear her voice, but it all now seems alien and frightening. Myeon notices them. Ah, there they are, she says, but doesn't take a step forward. I see they're living in luxury and comfort. You little brats are lucky. Changmin turns and sees the boys. Something snaps inside him. All the coldness, all the restraint disappears. His face doesn't contort into a scream. On the contrary, it becomes completely smooth, his eyes dark and empty, like 2 blocks of ice. But such a wave of danger begins to emanate from him that even Myeon involuntarily takes a step back. He slowly turns back to her. His voice is quieter, but each word falls like a steel nail. You, he pauses, will never speak to them again. You will never look their way. You no longer exist for them. Do you understand? It's not a threat. It's a statement of fact. There's such an inhuman, restrained fury in his voice that Myeon turns pale. She's seen a lot, but never this. The boys look at Changmin. They see his back, tense as a bowstring. They see his fists clenched. This isn't the dad who plays video games with them. This is something ancient and scary. But they're not afraid of him, because all this rage, all this power, isn't directed at them. She stands like a wall between them and the woman at the door. He protects them, like no one has ever protected them. Changmin keeps his icy gaze fixed on Myeon. "Kijeon," he says without turning around. The assistant, who had been silently watching from the shadows this whole time, steps forward. His face is a mask of professional politeness. "Ms. L," he says, "I think we should discuss the details in a more appropriate place. Please come along." He gestures to a small meeting room next to the office. Myeon, having recovered from her shock, lifts her chin again. "Let's discuss it. Then let's discuss it." Changmin doesn't go with them. He turns to the boys and his face changes. The icy mask melts, leaving only a stern look of weariness and concern. "It's okay," he says quietly. "Go to bed. No one will bother you. Ms. Kim, please see them out." The housekeeper, standing to the side, gently leads the shocked boys upstairs. Changmin enters the office but leaves the door open. He hears voices coming from the next room. Kijeong's voice is even, emotionless. "Your demands are naive. You're asking us to commit a crime, to buy children. We won't do it." "Then I'm leaving and calling the police," comes Myeon's voice. "Asasai." "Call," Kijeong retorts calmly. "The first question is, where have you been for the last 2 weeks? Why are the children you're supposedly looking for living with a biological father whose existence you claim you didn't know existed? Social services will be thrilled with your parental care. The court will easily terminate your parental rights for abandonment and neglect. You won't get a cent. You'll only get problems." There's a pause. Changmin hears Myeon nervously light a cigarette. "What do you want?" Her voice is no longer as confident as before. "We want to solve the problem," Kijeong says. "Once and for all." Changmin stands up and walks into the room. Myeon flinches. He sits down across from her and leans back in his chair. "I'll make you one offer," he says. "Just one. You will not negotiate." He looks her straight in the eyes. "You're signing an official renunciation of parental rights in my favor. Now. Tomorrow, the lawyers will formalize everything properly. You'll receive a lump sum, not what you asked for, but enough to start a new life, far from here, in another city. You're leaving. You'll never try to contact me or the children. You'll erase them from your memory, just as they've already erased you from theirs." He pauses to let the words sink in. "If you ever break this agreement, if your shadow of an E comes close to my family for a moment." He doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't need to. It's all clear. Myeon looks at him, then at Kijeong, who's laying out the preliminary waivers on the table. She's thinking, not about the children. She's mentally calculating the amount he'll probably give, thinking of a new city, a new life without the burden she never wanted. Her face slowly breaks into a smile, a greedy, grateful smile. "Will the money be here today?" she clarifies. "After the signing," Kijeong nods. "Then," she exhales smoke. "I agree. They've always been a burden to me. Take them with God." Changmin stands up. He doesn't even look at her with disdain now. She's just a nobody. He leaves the room. He hears Kijeong dictating the terms to her and takes out a pen. He goes upstairs, stands at the door to the nursery. He hears their ragged breathing. They are not sleeping. He enters quietly. 2 pairs of eyes stare at him from the darkness. "It's over," he says in simple, clear words. "She's leaving! Forever! She'll never bother you again. She didn't want to take us," Do-hyun whispers. "No," Changmin answers honestly. "But it's her loss. Her great loss. Because you are the best thing that could have happened to me. Sleep. Tomorrow our life begins." The real one. He waits until their breathing becomes even. Then he leaves. Downstairs in the hallway, Kijeong silently hands him the signed paper. Myeon is gone. It's over. The problem is gone. Only family remains. The next morning, the house is unusually quiet. Mrs. Kim is preparing breakfast, but her expression is preoccupied. Changmin has been in his office since early morning, talking to lawyers on the phone. His voice through the door is quiet but serious. Fragments of phrases can be heard. Paperwork, waiver of rights, court, adoption. Do-hyun and Min-cheol sat in the kitchen, silently picking at their porridge with spoons. They hadn't slept much all night. They heard their mother drive away. They heard the sound of a car. They lay in the dark, whispering, "He paid her money." Minchul said, his face pale in the darkness. He bought us. So we're like property? Do-hyun asked, a lump in his throat. I don't know, but now he has a piece of paper. And he might change his mind. Their childish logic works precisely and mercilessly. Mom sold them. That means they can be bought. And if they can be bought, then they can also be returned if they get boring, or if they become too much trouble. The fear, which had almost disappeared in recent days, returns with renewed vigor. It gnaws at them from within. After breakfast, they don't go out to play. They quietly make their way to the farthest room, a large dressing room where old clothes are kept. It smells of mothballs and silence. They crawl into a corner, between rows of suits, and sit on the floor, hugging their knees. Do-hyun whispers, "He's busy, and we're here. Now he knows we're liars," Mincheol adds. "First we lied, then we made him pay money. He might decide we're not worth it." They sit huddled together, listening to the clock ticking in the house. They're afraid to go out, afraid to see disappointment in his eyes. Or worse, cold calculation. An hour passes. Changmin ends one of his calls and leaves the office. He searches for the boys. They're not in the playroom, not in their room, not in the kitchen. Mrs. Kim hasn't seen them since this morning either. A slight look of alarm crosses his face. He quickly walks around the first floor, then up to the second. He peers into empty rooms. The silence in the house becomes oppressive. And then he remembers the large dressing room in the east wing. He approaches its door. It is ajar. He slowly steps inside. The room is dimly lit, the only light coming through a small, high window near the ceiling. At first, he sees no one. Then he notices two small, huddled figures in the far corner, between the hangers of old coats. His heart sank. He understood everything without words. He understood their fear. This silent horror in their postures spoke to him more than any words. He carefully approaches and sits down on the floor next to them, without touching them. His expensive trousers are now on the dusty floor, but he doesn't care. "Why are you sitting here?" he asks softly. Do-hyun shudders and buries his face in his knees. Minchul looks up at him. There's so much fear and guilt in those eyes that Changmin finds it hard to breathe. We didn't mean to interfere," Mincheol chokes out. "You're not interfering. We ruined everything," Do-hyun says quietly, without raising his head. "Because of us, you gave up the money. Mom sold us out. So He can't finish speaking. Changmin takes a deep breath. He looks at them, at these two little ones who, in their short lives, have already come to believe that they are a burden, a commodity, a problem. "Come here," he says firmly, but without commanding tone. They slowly, reluctantly, rise and take a step forward. Changmin reaches out and places his hands on their shoulders. He looks them straight in the eyes, one after the other. "Listen to me very carefully. I'll only say this once, but you must remember it forever." He pauses to make sure they're listening. "I won't give you up. Never. Not for any amount of money. Under any circumstances. You're not for sale. You're my sons, my family. And family isn't given away or sold. It's protected." He sees tears welling up in Do-hyun's eyes again. But this time they're tears of relief. Mincheol looks at him with a silent question, still afraid to believe it. "But, Mom, your mom made her choice. She chose money. And I choose you. Every day, every second. You are my children. Period." He doesn't wait for an answer. He simply pulls them into an embrace, strong, warm, reliable. At first they freeze, then their small hands clutch his clothes tightly, as if afraid he'll disappear. "It's over," he says quietly into the tops of their heads. "No one will come for you anymore. This is your home. I am your father, and it will always be this way." At that moment, something inside them finally breaks and reforms. Fear recedes, giving way to a fragile but genuine sense of security. They believe him, because his words aren't empty. They're backed by all his actions. After this conversation, life changes again, but this time, it changes for the better. Fear disappears, leaving room for ordinary childhood worries and joys. Changmin doesn't hide from them what's going on. Over dinner, he explains simply, "Various official matters will be taking place now. Good people will be coming, lawyers and a judge. They'll be asking questions, you and me. This is necessary so that everything is legal, so that your documents are genuine, and you are my sons not only here, but in all the papers. It's long, but nothing complicated." The boys listen and nod. Now that they know he won't give them up, they're ready for anything. Changmin's lawyers arrive, stern but polite men and women in suits. They speak with the boys alone in the playroom. They ask if they're scared, if they're comfortable with Changmin. and if they want to stay. Do-hyun and Min-cheol answer honestly and confidently. Then a social worker arrives, a kind middle-aged woman. She inspects the house, talks with Ms. Kim, and then talks with the children again. She sees their clean, happy faces, their new clothes, their room filled with toys and books. She sees how they look at Changmin, with trust and love. Changmin goes through all the interviews himself. He answers all the questions about his work, even the most uncomfortable ones. He presents documents proving that his business is legal and that he has no legal problems. He does everything required with incredible patience. Myeon disappears. As agreed, she took the money and left town that same day. There's no word from her. And everyone, including the boys, understands that this is how it should be. She's become part of a past that no longer has power over them. The process continues week after week. Sometimes it seems like the paperwork will never end, but Changmin doesn't show any irritation. Every evening, he explains to the children what step has been taken that day, and there's an extraordinary peace in this routine. Life at home is now governed not only by safety rules, but also by a simple, understandable schedule. Breakfast, lessons with a visiting teacher. Changmin has decided to teach them at home for now. Games, dinner, and reading before bed. The boys begin to laugh loudly and often. They fill the house with their voices, footsteps, and laughter. The huge, deserted building gradually turns into a home. Their home. One evening, after yet another lawyer had left, Do-hyun, sitting on the couch next to Changmin, asks, "When this is all over, will we go to school, like everyone else?" Changmin looks at him and smiles. It's no longer that rare, uncertain smile, but calm, warm. "Yes, when this is all over, you'll go to the best school, and you'll have the most ordinary, happiest life. I promise." And they believe him, because he has kept every promise he has made so far. Information, as often happens, leaks through the smallest cracks. Someone low-ranking witnesses the stern Ki-jong buying children's books at an expensive store. Their relationship is a cold truce, beneath which the ice of mutual hostility smolders. Jae-hwan learns that Changmin has fathered children, 2 boys, biological sons, as they say. His cold, calculating mind immediately sees this not as family happiness, but as vulnerability. A serious vulnerability. He gives a quiet order. Find out everything. Where they hang out, what their schedule is, who's guarding them. He doesn't have anything concrete planned, for now, but information is a weapon, and the enemy's weakness is an opportunity. The surveillance begins. Discreet, professional. A black car sometimes appears in the same area where the boys are walking. Various people in sunglasses appear nearby at a children's store or cafe. They do nothing. They just watch and remember. Ki-jong notices it first. No walks without 3 people around. Change routes every day. School? He asks. The paperwork is almost ready. They were supposed to go to a school near their home in a week, Ki-jong says. Cancelled. He probes for a weak spot, and he found it. There's no fear in his voice, but a cold, absolute determination. Now he knows his old world has extended its tentacles into his new life, and he's ready to cut it off. Despite all precautions, an incident occurs. This isn't a school, but a dental clinic. Do-hyun had a toothache and needed urgent dental care. The safest route was planned, an unmarked car, and 3 security guards. 1 was driving, 2 were in the car with the boys. They were being waited for. Apparently, the surveillance had been long and professional. On a quiet street near the clinic, their car was suddenly blocked by 2 SUVs. 5 men in black, their faces covered, emerged from them. They moved quickly and silently. The goal was clear. Not murder, but kidnapping. Living collateral is a powerful lever of pressure. Changmin's security guards reacted instantly. The driver locked the doors. The other 2 forced the boys onto the floor of the car, shielding them with their bodies, and drew their weapons. They didn't enter the fray, risking the children's lives. They took up defensive positions inside the car. The attackers tried to break the glass, but it was armored. The situation reached a stalemate for a few seconds, and then reinforcements arrived. Ki-jong, always on the alert, was tracking the car's movements via GPS. Seeing it parked in an unauthorized area, he raised the alarm. 2 more security vehicles, following at a distance, rushed in from either side, cutting off the attackers' escape route. Seeing the operation had failed and the numerical superiority was now on their side, the men in black retreated with lightning speed, jumped into their cars, and took off. Changmin's guards didn't pursue them. Their primary objective had been accomplished. The boys were safe. It all took less than 3 minutes. Do-hyun and Min-cheol, pale as chalk, sat on the floor of the car, hugging each other. They saw everything and understood everything. They understood that they were being hunted, like an object. They were scared, but they didn't cry. They saw how their guards, these usually silent men, unhesitatingly stood between them and danger. Ki-jong, who arrived 5 minutes later, personally drove them home. His face was inscrutable, but his eyes burned with a cold fire. On the same note, Chang-min arrived at his office. He had a short, quiet meeting with Jae-hwan. No one knows exactly what they discussed. They say Chang-min entered his rival's office unguarded and emerged 10 minutes later. After this meeting, all signs of surveillance on his home and family disappeared forever. After the incident, a tense silence descends on the house. But it's not the silence of fear. It's the silence of deep contemplation. Chang-min sits alone in his office. In front of him aren't papers, but a photograph Do-hyun drew that day. It depicts a large house, 3 figures, 1 large, 2 small, and a bright yellow sun. The caption reads, "My family." He looks at this drawing and sees something more than a child's drawing. He sees a fragile, utterly defenseless world that now depends on him. A world that his old life, with its shadowy rules and constant threats, could crush at any moment. He thinks about what happened. His enemies have found his weakness, and they will find it again and again. As long as he remains in this world, his sons will always be in his sights. Even if he destroys all his current enemies, new ones will appear. It's an endless cycle, and he makes a decision, not an impulsive one, but a balanced and final one. He calls Ki-jong. Everything connected with the old methods, with all the shady schemes, he says, we're phasing it out, gradually, without any sudden movements, but irreversibly. Ki-jong looks at him, understanding everything without words. Are you sure? It will take years. We'll lose a lot of money and influence. I don't need influence that puts my children at risk, Chang-min answers calmly. We'll make money in other ways, legal ones, investments, transport, maybe even that project of yours with the logistics centers. I want our name to be associated only with honest business in 5 years, so that I want my sons to have a future I won't be ashamed of. I want them to be able to walk down the street without having to look over their shoulders. Ki-jong nods slowly. He sees in his boss's eyes the same unwavering determination that once allowed them to build their empire. Now that determination is aimed at destroying it, or more accurately, transforming it into something else. Okay, Ki-jong says, I'll make a plan. Thus begins a new, most difficult and important mission in Chang-min's life, a slow, careful process of bringing the entire business into the legal realm. He sells some assets, legalizes others, and closes others. It's a huge, painstaking undertaking. Sometimes he has to make painful concessions and lose old partners who are unwilling to change. But every evening, when he returns home, he hears ringing laughter in the hallways. He sees Do-hyun trying to tell him something halting and rushed about a new lesson. He feels Min-cheol sitting next to him, serious and silent, simply to be near. He looks at the front door of his house, the same door that 2 frightened boys with backpacks once knocked on. Now this door is more than just an entrance. It's a symbol. It's open. Open to their laughter, their running, their future. And his heart, which for so many years was a fortress with locked gates, is now open too. Wide open. The door of his home and his heart is forever open to them, to Do-hyun and Min-cheol, to his sons. And he knows that this is the only treasure that has true value, and he will protect it to the end.